I think there's something about, the environments we inhabit and places that we were born, and then where we, being a part of that diaspora, and where we move to, and all of that is, I think, plays upon as well. Like, you know, Akila's father left Jamaica and left some things behind, ends up in New York, and then his own son makes his own journey and leaves some things behind and goes to Canada. And I do believe that there is something that's transformative that young Keela takes with him as a boy when he leaves New York and ends up in Toronto, that there are some things he had to leave behind, and some things that he didn't want to leave behind, his mother and the situation that she was in. So there's that conflict even with that, and this sort of exile even, when we move away. So those sort of thematics are in there, for sure, and place plays a strong part in I believe in my own personal family, from Jamaica to New York to Toronto, and we don't often see films, especially out of Canada, that actually draw that connection, and so it was important to connect those dots.
I also relate to what you're talking about in terms of migration and reinvention. It's true that, and I've had many opportunities in my life as a teenager, as an adult, to move someplace. I mean, someone who hasn't done that might know about that simply from, they can empathize from like what it was like if you ever changed high schools or changed schools and decided that you were gonna, be different or carry yourself different, differently in this new, situation. And when you change cities, when you change countries, yes, there are things that you miss. There are things that you hope to bring with you, but you also see it, yes, as an opportunity to reinvent, to become something different, to face choices differently, and to hold yourself accountable to those differences in a different way than you would if you were where you started. And it's freeing in many ways. And so then, of course, the thing that perhaps nobody wants to hear is the things that are inescapable, because I know that Akilla hoped to be able to escape, some of the choices that his father made and the outcome of his father's life. And so those are the things too that are also interesting, are the inevitabilities in it all. But yeah, it's an interesting balance. And I think one of the things I enjoy about Charles' writing and this film is that those questions circulating around the idea of diaspora. And yes, on one hand, you may be fleeing something, but yeah, I don't think enough is said about what opportunities may open when you step into something new, and I think Akilla really benefits from that. Not anyone we encounter in the film really knows his background. Not even the Greek really knows fully what he was coming from. And so he was able to hold on to something and move forward in his own personal story. And then it's also interesting to see how those stories catch up with each other.
That relationship was key in the storytelling, and in terms of who this man is, and how he was shaped as a boy, and what would happen if he encounters, a reflection of himself, and from his own experiences. Now, what would he actually do? And that question, you have a choice. There's a moment where he can either say, okay, cool, let's watch it. Let's abuse the heck out of this kid and get what we need to do and call it a night. But then there's something about his principle. There's something inside of him that may not be like this, sketched out, 5-point manifesto, but it's inside of him. And he makes his choice that he can't actually see this happen right now. And it's almost, it's like, I've always felt like it's a reaction. It's an instinctual thing, as well as he sees and knows that this is actually not the way to do it. So I do feel like there is that relationship that is also very quiet. It's not filled with a lot of words. Just seeing these two individuals together, and it's actually because it's Tam is playing both characters. It's like when he's sitting in the car with Shepard, he's actually sitting with himself as a boy. You know, when he's pulling him up the hill, he's pulling himself up the hill. When he's chasing after himself. So those sort of visual ideas and metaphors is in there about that relationship of us as men to us as boys, that we've staying connected to that, remembering that. It's so and what moments will trigger that.
And I think what's beautiful about what Charles is saying and about what he was able to convey in the film is that, you know, you talk about those principles because, you know, the way that you reference, you know, like, what is it, the Iliad and Baldwin and, you know, the building of principles in this character, because when oftentimes, you know, if we were talking about a narcissist, when a narcissist encounters a reflection of themselves, the reaction is different, you know? And Akilla, yes, encounters a reflection of himself, but because of the role that the principles that he's engaged with in life, it's not narcissism that drives him to try to pull out something with his relationship to Shepard. It's actually, you know, a recognition of something different, a principled recognition of something, you know, and wanting to push towards difference. And so that's beautiful too, because when you talk about just encountering a reflection of oneself, I automatically think of, maybe it's because I'm in the States and I'm thinking about the narcissist that's in the White House. Yeah. That's what's interesting, is that he encounters a reflection of himself and he doesn't just stare at the reflection and go, whoa, how beautiful.
Even still, there's a lot of there's a lot of symbolism that comes with that role, you know, what with him, you know, being my character, or my, you know, me playing both roles as younger Akilla and as Shepard, you know, it's supposed to kind of embody that kind of like mental projection that older Akilla has on that character, on Shepard, you know, seeing so much of himself in this position because he grew up in a circumstance very similar to his own. Like it's something that he can very closely identify with when he encounters this boy. So you see kind of this like mental shift in equilibrium to where, okay, well, now I have this agenda, now I have this outcome that I'm seeking, and it kind of alternates to, okay, well, now I'm just trying to like rescue that concept of myself when I was younger. So yeah. Although it isn't meant to be all that, there is a lot of metaphors. There is a lot of symbolism. There is a lot of like that subtext that exists within, you know, having me play these two roles, that, you know, the film just really benefits from. I think that because, you know, I'm playing two different, I just see them as two different characters for the most part, with a similar narrative, but you're handling it from two different like positions in history. So, you know, you have during that time and what young Akilla was going through, you have like all of these elements that amount to, you know, who he becomes as older Akilla, you know, the influence of his dad, his household family dynamic, and what impact and what role that plays into a becoming like, you know, young adult. So you have that, but with Shepard, you know, it's kind of different, like how he gets involved into those circumstances that are similar to young Akilla's are a little bit different because he, you know, although he has kind of like that troublesome upbringing, it's mainly because of his like, you know, inability to fit in that he kind of gets mixed into the wrong crowd. And, you know, it's not something that is a voluntary decision of his own where, you know, he is trying to just kind of like find his place, but it winds up being like the wrong step. And he accidentally makes a move into a direction that isn't the most ideal for, you know, who he should become and who he knows that he's supposed to be. So, I mean, like, you know, you have one person, young Akilla, who is really just trying to make the best of himself given the set of circumstances that he is, and then Shepard, who's still finding himself and trying to take action to, like, you know, figure out where he's supposed to belong. So yeah, that's kind of like a way that I saw it. One of the many ways that I saw it when I was acting the two roles.
Year 2000, my first short film, literally on the first Saturday afternoon, my first short film I ever made played at TIFF. So it's a very interesting journey, but I've had a few films play there, but this one was a really real important one, because yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey making this one and coming back with this one with this team and at a different point of my life, and it was really it's a special thing. I'm not taking for granted that the space and the slim down selection process and just take it for granted. Like last night, Saul, you were so missed, bro. Like you would have really loved it. It was to be in public, you know, it was distant, but it was beautiful. It was by the water, and people felt intimate, but they were safe. And, you know, being in a theater and watching a film with people, you know, people watch television at home. They watch on their laptops, but cinema has that thing about that we were talking about earlier. It's just like it is a communal experience, and it was very special last night. And being a part of the Planet Africa 25, I hope that program rethinks itself and can possibly be something that remains.
I think that he makes this decision because there's that beautiful quote that he says to the Greek about survival, you know, favoring the adaptable, not the strong. And I think that he's coming to the reality, perhaps too late, that what he's involved in is so similar to the relationship that his father had with drugs and politics that maybe it was time for another layer and step of reinvention, you know? And so and oftentimes that's how we operate, right? We use what we know to reach a point, to get us to a point where we can then jump off and to explore more of the unknown, you know? And I think that he had reached that point where he was ready, you know, and I don't think it's the first time that he had made a huge decision in his life, obviously. And I think there's more than the two that we see in this film. I think there's other big decisions that he made as he grew in his trade and in his life. And I think that he was on the cusp of making one more major decision that would have transformed, that would have, you know, maybe crystallized his transformation in life.
And we're so blessed to have Saul and Robert, and like it's the synergy of how that happened was magical, and it really elevates the film like massively. So Denisha is amazing. She came out last night and she spoke beautifully about roles that are, you know, available for a woman who speaks the way she speaks and looks the way she looks. And she's an amazing actor that I stalked for a while in theater. She does a lot of amazing theater work, and definitely wanted to play a twist on who the authority is that we're coming to meet. So